Wow, talk about a massive disappointment. Let's get to it. Antebellum is a new horror thriller that stars Janelle Monáe. This is a film I was very excited for. It got pushed to September due to the pandemic on PVOD. I did the 1999 rental, and I found myself so disappointed. And I was like, man, I want to like this movie. I agree with the messages in this movie. I think there's some really good filmmaking techniques that they tried and attempted to use. But I felt like it was just a waste of time because it just failed on every level that I was trying to do. And I think there are other movies that handle this content so much better, much more artistic, and had so much more to say. So I'm wearing this shirt because I think it's very appropriate, as I got this a few weeks ago, and it says, "Destroy Racism." That is something I truly believe in, and it's something that I think as a whole we need to stand up with everybody and combat this oppression that the black community has faced, and even other minorities that live in this country. And it's something that I want to be a part of and do my part and understand and learn and educate myself on these matters, because there is so much racism, especially where I live in America. But the reason why I say this is because I'm not critiquing necessarily the message, and I don't want people thinking that it's because it's too preachy in your face. It's just one of those films that I think Get Out and I think 12 Years a Slave, they're different in their content necessarily, but I think they handle those subject matters so much more. I think there's a lot more conversation to be said about those films, a lot more analysis to be brought in those films than a movie that tries to be smart, tries to think it can outsmart its audience. But in reality, I knew exactly what they were doing right in the first 10 to 15 minutes of this film, because they don't handle the plantation stuff very well. I get it's supposed to be a more modern social commentary take on it, but you look at it and you're like, this is just a white man's vision of what would slavery look back then. Because 12 Years a Slave is completely different, especially in their costumes, the way that all their slave owners would handle things. It just didn't keep me immersed in this film. And I knew right away this is not what it seems, and I already knew the twist right from the beginning because it felt just too obvious. So the first 40 minutes of this film were kind of ridiculous. It went on way too long, and then you cut to a completely different point in time, and you're like, all right, I know exactly now. I know exactly how the rest of this movie is going to go. And that was a massive problem for me, because then the rest of the film acts like it should have been the beginning of the movie and having these weird, subtle little messages that are going around, some little horror, creepy things that happen. And I kept saying to myself, it should have started here. It should have not started at 40 minutes before. I get what they're trying to do. It's like, oh, look at all, like, everything happened in the first 40 minutes. Somehow that they're connected together. What's that connection? But I had already known what that connection was. So it felt very silly, and it felt like it was very too much try hard and very pretentious, especially when we get later into this film. I just couldn't buy into anything that they were doing. There was a lot of terrible character decisions that made no sense. You could feel the atmosphere of them trying to set up certain things, and you can dissect their writing, like, okay, we need to put this here, and then this has to happen, and then this has to happen, so we can get this image that is a powerful message. It seems like they wrap this movie around the message and not have their message flow within the story itself, because that's what the best movies do. I found this movie extremely boring. It felt as though that it wanted to be bigger than what it was, and it wasn't. The horrors and thrills, they're non-existent. And I understand the horror of the film is supposed to be the twist and how insanely dark and twisted it is. But I think Get Out handled that so much better, and it was a lot more intense. And people try to say that film is not dark and not scary, but I think it is, because it feels like something like that could happen, because the world that's created by Jordan Peele makes it feel real. This movie never felt real because they don't go into logistics of anything in this film. And I understand that it's supposed to be the message of it, but it felt so silly, and you're saying to yourself, this is so beyond radical. They don't explain how are they able to do this? How are the rules here? Where is this located? How is this even possible? Because it feels like when you see the twist, it's so out in the open. There's some subtle things that if you like talk about and you realize at the end, like, oh, that was cool, they weren't very subtle with that. You have to really pay attention to certain character names to understand, wow, that's kind of dark, that's kind of twisted. And that was the parts that I liked, but everything else was just so silly, and the tone also didn't work for me at all. There's some humor that's sprinkled in at very inappropriate times, and it just kept me out of the movie. I'm like, okay, what is the tone of this movie? Because you need to make this movie a horror, very dark film. And the humor could work, but it just never does. And I found the characters very annoying, very dumb, and I found everyone just being cartoon characters, and it was just not a film that I think worked at all. I'm going to give this film a 3 out of 10. Let me know what you guys really thought about it, because I'm very curious of what you guys thought if you guys did the rental. Please like, share the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It means the world to me that you guys have subscribed, liking my videos. You guys are the best, the best, the best. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video.